I'm going to call to order the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection Board for Tuesday, May 3rd. It is 10 a.m. and we will start with a salute to the flag. Mr. Reynolds, would you lead us in the salute to the flag, sir?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
Bon Hartung, Chair.
Here.
Lexis Hill, Vice Chair.
Here.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Kitty Jung.
Present.
Jean Herman.
Here.
Fire Chief Charles Moore.
Here.
And District Attorney Mary Candares. Here. And I'm Jan Galasini, your County Clerk. Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chief, would you take us into item number 3, public comment, please?
Yes, sir. Item number 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, do you have anyone signed in for public comment?
I have nobody signed in, but I did receive an email from Tom Daly that will be placed on the record.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, we will close public comment and take it to item number 4, Commissioners and Fire Chiefs announcements. Chief, will you take us into that item, please?
Item 4 is Commissioners, Fire Chiefs announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Chief, do you have any such items?
Just one follow-up. I believe Commissioner Lucy had asked for a review of our facilities, kind of get an idea of the condition, a condition assessment, so that'll be coming next month.
Okay.
And
Commissioners,
that's all I have.
okay, thank you. Commissioners, I don't have anyone signed in. Does anyone? Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I just want to make a quick thank you to both Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District staff, BLM, and Nevada Division of Forestry. We did have controlled burns up in Whites Creek and the Galena Creek area, as most individuals saw over the last couple of days and throughout the weekend, to burn under piles, slash piles, and a lot of the undergrowth that needed to be disposed of. And I want to thank them for their very, a controlled response to that and making sure that everybody was, one, aware, but two, the staffing that was available. So thank you for making sure that we didn't experience a nasty, especially with the wind events that we've had, but they had everything under control and made sure that everything was well contained and burned well. So a big thank you to all the staff at all of those different agencies. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Lucy. Commissioner Jung, I have you signed in next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind the chair that it'd be great to get a National Weather Service in here to give us their predictions for the summer and what we might be looking forward to. And I want to thank Commissioner Lucy for keeping us apprised over this weekend, because I had phone calls from near and far, and the fire chief. And thank you, Mr. Fire Chief, to making sure that our resources were down there as backup, of which the fire service is paying us back for. I might remind everyone, because as Commissioner Lucy said, this was his district, and this was like a fever dream of what could possibly happen again. And I'm just so grateful for the chief and the commissioner to keep us up to date and make sure that we have the resources there one way or the other, that this doesn't become another human-made natural disaster. So thank you so much, Mr. Chief, for your communication. And I'm sure all the other commissioners got phone calls from that too, because everybody has a little bit of PTSD when it comes to seeing that smoke, especially down south. I mean, we've seen the smoke coming from the west, but we could never see the fires. But when that big one hit of a controlled burn and then went crazy at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can't imagine what the constituents down there are feeling, but even my constituents are, they're your smoke spotters, Mr. Fire Chief, because they call us. I'm sure all of you get the phone calls too saying, did you guys see the fire down there? So I want to thank you tremendously, and thanks for making us feel like we wouldn't have to revisit this terrible nightmare that we have done before, that to no fault of our own. And thanks for providing the resources, you and the chair and the commissioner of that district. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. Yeah, Chief, I So my turn, I don't see anybody else signed in. I want to thank you for the hard work that you've done trying to keep the fuels reduction program moving forward. Thank you. I know we've run into a few stumbling blocks, but I think we've overcome that, and let's press ahead as quickly as we can. And Commissioner Jung, that's a great idea. Chief, let's reach out to the National Weather Service and have, I'm trying to think of his name, I can see his face.
Chris Malcolm.
Chris Smalcolm, that's it. Thank you so much. Yeah, let's have Chris, if he can schedule a time, hopefully it can be next month and the beginning of June. Let's also ask Tumwa to send Mr. Hauk out at the same time, and let's have a water outlook so that this board can at least get a look at that. And I don't know whether maybe we should do both of those at the county commission instead of here, or here and the county commission. It makes no difference to me, but we can talk about that at our next commission meeting. But I think it's important to talk about our water outlook, because it has a lot to do with how the fuels are growing. And it's been, I know we've talked about this, you've heard me say, but my yard is, just the dirt areas that historically have been fairly light in past years, I have had to do a lot of removal of weeds this year, a lot. I mean, they have just gone berserk, and so I've had people tell me, oh, it's the timing of everything, but prior, and it's really interesting because at my house, I think it was Sunday night. I don't know whether it was Sunday night or Saturday night. We had rain. It rained I don't know whether it rained anywhere else, but it rained pretty good at our house. Woke me up. Which means we're going to have another burst of this green stuff that will quickly dry out, and there we go. So I think those two things, Chief, and we can coordinate backwards. I know you've got the National Weather Service's contact information, and if you need Mr. Hauk's contact information, I'm happy to provide that from Tumwa, and I know Bill will be happy to come out and give us an outlook on our water storage and just how things are looking, because it does pertain to fire. It absolutely does. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Chief, let's go to item number 5. If you would take us into that, the approval of the meeting minutes.
So there is no consent agenda. There's just this item, so that's why you're not seeing that. But item 5 is a recommendation to approve the meeting minutes from the April 5th, 2022 Board of Fire Commissioners meeting.
Commissioners, are there any emendations in those minutes?
No, move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chair Hill, second by Commissioner Herman. Is there any discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment.
And close
For
public comment?
clarification, Commissioner Herman was the second?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
sorry. Yeah, motion by Hill, second by Herman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Chief, item number 6, proclaim the period of May. It's a proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 6, proclaim the period of May to October 2022 as Nevada.
Ooh. We're going to let it go, Chief, because
Yeah,
I've done it
thanks.
before, too.
Just not enough
But
coffee.
just because he also says opal. So he's consistent.
I caught myself. I caught myself.
We've all done it.
Nevada Wildfire Awareness Campaign. We have Ms. Jamie Royce Gomes from UNR, who runs a stellar program for us. And Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read the proclamation?
Chief, why don't you go ahead? I think
Okay.
I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Very good. I'll
Unless
step
one of the
down.
other commissioners would like to read it. Okay, I think it should be you, Chief. Welcome. Tell us who you are for the record. I know Chief said it, but
Can you hear me?
yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. For the record, my name is Jamie Royce Gomes, and I am the manager of the Living with Fire program. We are an interagency effort. We work with local, state, and federal firefighting agencies, and it's managed at the University of Nevada, Reno Extension.
Thank you so much.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll read the proclamation. Whereas wildfire significantly impacts Nevada's environmental, economic, and social well-being, and whereas residents must prepare to survive wildfire by ensuring proper management of vegetation surrounding the home and appropriate home construction and maintenance to resist ignition. And whereas residents need to work together to prepare their homes and communities to survive wildfire and commit to become fire adapted. And whereas residents can save precious time in an evacuation by preparing a go bag and family evacuation plan ahead of time. Now, therefore, the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Board of Fire Commissioners proclaim the period of May to October 2022 as the Nevada Wildfire Awareness Campaign, and this year's banner theme is Battleborn, Wildfire Ready. As a means for education and a call for residents of Washoe County to work together to be ready for wildfire, dated this third day of May 2022, and will be signed by the Chair, Von Hartung. So I think this is timely because we can't respond our way out of the wildfire mess here. We can't have enough firefighters, enough fire trucks. We have to participate with our citizens, and Jamie is a great partner in that, and helping us lead community discussions and community programs, and so we're very thankful for your partnership, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Chief. Thank you, Ms. Royce Gomes. Would you like to say a few words also?
Yes, please. I'm going to echo what Chief Moore said. I mean, there's just not enough resources and firefighters out there to save every single home. And so that's why we do this campaign. We really want to implore residents to prepare for wildfire now and to reduce the wildfire risk. And so we have been really busy. I just want to talk about the few collaborations that we've worked on. So we have updated a wildfire evacuation checklist. And we have worked with the Washoe County Regional Animal Services and included how you can prepare your pets for wildfire. We have included the Washoe County Sheriff's Office in this publication, and they gave their input, as well as local agencies like Truckee, Meadows, and statewide agencies too. And so we have this updated checklist. In my opinion, it's one of the best out there. But this is a really great way that folks can prepare for wildfire. We also created a fact sheet with the Washoe County Emergency Manager's Office, and we wanted folks to know what the local emergency notification system is. What is Code Red? Why is it important? And how to sign up. And so we have a publication on that too. And lastly, we also worked with the Washoe County Health District, particularly the air quality division. And so we have a publication on living with wildfire smoke. What's in wildfire smoke? Why is it impacting our health, and how you can reduce that impact on your health. And so I really urge folks to please check out our website, livingwithfire.com, so that you can prepare for wildfire. So thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and one more thing. So I brought a banner. This is the banner that we have every year. I was wondering if we could maybe get like a photo opportunity with this
Absolutely.
banner.
Sure.
You bet. Yep. Always looking for an opportunity to take a picture. Nice. Okay, let's have a photograph. Chief, you want to come down in the well and we'll do all of that?
We're going this way, Jamie.
Oh, okay, sure.
Chief, where is her proclamation that I need to sign?
It's there, there's a title in it, so I got it.
Okay, all right. Are you guys just challenged, or can you just not see center? Sorry.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
So there's that. You're welcome. We'll get you another one, but in a little folder.
Yeah, and I'll get you copies, but we'll do another one that's fixed.
I apologize, I just can't get away from something that I did for years, and so it just has to be centered. So that is, I believe that this is for action. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve this proclamation?
So moved, Chairman.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Lucy,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Hill. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Again, thank you so much, Ms. Royce Gomes. We really
Yes.
appreciate you coming out and taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, that takes us now to item number 7.
Item 7 is the International Association of Firefighters Local 2487 report, and I believe Mr. Aaron Reynolds is here to present.
Mr. Reynolds.
Hey, good
Welcome.
morning, everyone. Aaron Reynolds, Treasurer, Local 2487. Two things to report this morning. The first one, negotiations with the district are complete. We feel that they went very well. We're waiting on a couple of documents, and then we anticipate ratification from the membership very soon. And so we're excited about that. The second one is the 10th annual Guns and Hoses fundraiser. Raised $34,440, so pretty good for a single day golf fundraiser. All that money goes to the Northern Nevada Children's Cancer Foundation. And out of 10 days of golf, when you figure the last 10 years, totals $207,000. And so just a quick shout out to John Sieben from 2487 and Russ Peterson from Washoe County Sheriff's Office, who head that up every year. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Was that a record, Aaron? 34?
Yes, let me confirm the number again because my brain's not.
34.4, I think you said?
34,440 is
Okay.
the total.
Yeah, was that I mean, that sounds like a really good number. I don't think we've hit that number before, have we?
You know, to be honest, I don't
Okay.
know what the previous year's total were, so
Okay.
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Commissioners, before you get away, Aaron, are there any questions? I just want to make sure that the commissioners don't have any
back.
questions for you. Okay? Okay, very good. I apologize. Just
No, that's
need
fine.
you to, need you to stay in shape so we're getting your morning workout. All right, we will close item 7 and take us into item 8, Chief, the Fire Chief's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to brief you on wildfire season update. Staff met with Nevada Division of Forestry over the Wildfire Protection Plan, which the commissioners may recall is a statewide plan where each local agency contributes funds to help pay for the costs of fighting a wildfire, which in our case are usually quite expensive. So I believe we pay somewhere around $130,000 or so, and that covers all the costs of our firefighting in our district, and the county does the same thing. So it's a very, very good plan, and we thank the state of Nevada for implementing that. What's notable for this wildfire season is that the state of Nevada will contract for 2 Scooper airplanes. And what's different about that is that before the state would rely on federal resources, and those planes could disappear if there's a fire in California or Oregon or some other state where they're needed. So when they're under contract with the state of Nevada, they'll stay here in Nevada and they'll be available for us to use, and they won't disappear to another state. So that's a big plus for us. Additionally, they'll also have 1 single-engine aircraft tanker, which we call a seat. That'll be on contract, so it will be available, as well as the helicopter resources that are based in Minden. So one thing that is degrading a little bit is the availability of hand crews. The state inmate crews will only have about half of what we normally will see, but we are going to add another squad of wildfires to our deployment and our census of firefighting. So we're actually increasing our resources a bit, and I think other local agencies are also doing the same. So we're trying to compensate in that regard. So looking at some of the weather briefing, and the preliminary indications are that it's going to be somewhat normal for us. I'm going to send you a link after the meeting, and we'll also post it on our website. But it's from the Great Basin Coordinating Center that talks about a little bit about the forecast. It's a short video. Also give you some information, but the early precipitation in the fall and the winter got the cheatgrass going, but the dry spring made it kind of patchy. But now with the recent moisture, that patchy grass is a little bit more robust. So from what I read of the briefings, is we expect a normal wildfire season, which doesn't mean much because
So what's normal? Yeah, what does that mean?
normal means the same number of starts that we typically have. The Great Basin Coordinating Center is calling for a little bit more risk in the tall timber as there was last year.
Okay.
But we'll see. I think we'll have risk both in the tall timber and in the grass. We're also adding about 14 volunteers to our complement of firefighters so that we have them available to respond water tenders and other wildland resources. And in fact, in June, I'll bring this back to you, that we're shifting the focus of volunteers to strictly wildland fire, where they are manpower intensive and equipment intensive. It's a great way for volunteers to serve. This training for structure fires is too onerous and it takes too much time, and they never get to respond to a structure fire anyway. But plenty of wildland fires and plenty of things for them to do. So another 14 to the census. The other thing we're losing is the transport vehicle that was on loan from us from Nevada Division of Forestry that would truck our dozer. So the tractor and the trailer combination is going back to NDF. The way that we'll compensate for that is we'll hire a contractor and we'll have them on standby. And as our budget progresses, I may want to take a look at finding another federal resource, perhaps a surplus, or even if we have to, I may come back and recommend that we purchase our own tractor trailer and just have that available to go. So we've got it covered. So I think, around Memorial Day is when we start to see our activity increase. We're prepared for that. We've done all of our preseason training, and we're as ready as we can be on that. I'm going to ask the clerk to hand out, we just got this last night from TSK Architects, who is our architect of record on the new Station 30, which is a combination of the East Lake and the Bower Station. And it's going to be the same design as we do for Apple. So this design is going to be used in both locations. You may recognize it as looking fairly familiar because it's modeled off of Station 33. It'll just be a bit smaller than Station 33. So we are planning to have an engine, a brush engine, a structural engine, 2 water tenders, not just one, but 2 water tenders, the medic unit, and I think that's about it. So the medic unit, we are planning to staff that, not with REMSA, but with TM resources and personnel. So what we promised and what staff described as having in that station would be a full-time engine and a full-time ambulance, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've taken on this design to make it flexible, so if we ever want to grow it, we can. We can add additional bays depending on where we site it. And we can also add additional bedrooms. So we're anticipating a total of 6 bedrooms, and so that will take care of the engine crew and the medic. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about this more in the budget presentation, but I wanted to pass this out to you just so you know that staff's making progress And again, when this station gets done, Apple will also be done at the same time. So that will staff both of those stations immediately upon completion of these stations.
So Chief, let me ask you a question about this, because I see this under site concept. We've got a heliopad. Great. I mean, that's just, it just makes so much sense. Are we gonna do the same thing at Apple? Do we have enough space to put a heliopad out there?
We probably would have the space to do it. We hadn't discussed it with Apple, but there's no reason why we couldn't.
Can't imagine why we would not, given its proximity to the freeway and everything else, and the need to, I mean, it just makes so much more sense to, you know, to have, to at least to just to have access to it, for whatever reason. Because they may not be able to land in a particular place, but if we can get them back to the station, I mean, it just makes sense. Is that heliopad, it doesn't look like it's paved. Is it just a dirt pad?
I think we would likely pave it. I think it's safer for the aircraft to land on it.
Well, I mean, the center looks paved, but the whole section doesn't look paved. Where the H is, it looks paved. But that's just a very small piece of what you've got cordoned out here. At least, I mean, I can't do the math of how much of the site it's actually taking up, but I love the design. I think it's just wise. Absolutely think it's wise. Because I know in Spanish Springs, I mean, we've had to, in some places, I mean, landing in the street can be touch and go.
Right.
Pun intended. It's a difficult scenario, and just depending on, I mean, especially on the side streets out, you know, where I live, it's difficult. So I think that this is just really a wise design. Commissioners, any questions on this design, or do we want to wait until we get to the agenda item itself in the budget? Okay. Thanks, Chief. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move on to green waste and ash cans. I'll just let that memo speak for itself. We do have 2 more green waste days coming up, one in Palomino Valley and one in Spanish Springs coming up in the month of May. And I believe we're done for the season until the fall. So that concludes the Fire Chief's report.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for supporting the ash can project. Again, it's one of those things where you just don't know what you've saved, but you know that, I mean, have we seen a reduction, Chief, in ash and oily rag fires since we've started this program?
Absolutely. We were having, before your great idea of handing these out for free, we would have somewhere around 3 per year. And I don't know if you recall, but we actually took a break on this program for a year or two. And guess what? We had 1 or 2 more fires each year. So every year that we've had this program, I can't recall any oily rag fires or ash fires as a result of carelessness. But yeah, people love this program. They show up, and we're pretty much through the stock in a day or 2.
Are we out of stock now, Chief?
No, Mr. Chairman, we've got a few more pallets, and we think we'd like to hold on to those until the fall and
Okay.
then do this again.
Okay. All right. I mean, I don't know how much, what the need is for the summertime, but if there is a need, I'll make sure that there's a little bit of funding to cover that. So just, you know, let me
Great.
know. Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the chief?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I
That's fine.
apologize, I
I was
didn't
just
see
wondering if we could get an update on our 50-year anniversary and any activities that the board can support for this year. Thank you.
Okay. Chief, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in the monthly report, I'm appreciative of the call volume by station. I mean, I had a difficult time because it just seems like nothing lines up on this new, the way they've got it graphed out. And then, so I'm hopeful you can maybe go to a different style of graph instead of this diagonal. And then also, can we make sure, And maybe we can just put it in the graph somewhere that we know the station numbers. Because I know we see the station number by mutual, actually, we don't see the station numbers by mutual aid. But I know periodically we list that, but we just, we have Sun Valley, Spanish Springs, Arrow Creek. It would just be nice to have the station numbers as well.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay, yep. Well, no, I know it's on there, but
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at call volume, the sheet that was sent to us.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any other questions? All right, we'll close this item. Chief, that takes us now to item number 9.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, that was an action item and there
Oh,
was no
I'm
public
sorry.
comment.
But we really didn't take any action.
No.
But,
There was no public comment.
Okay, there is no public comment?
No.
Okay, all right, we'll close that, bring it back to the board, and take us into item number 9, Chief.
Mr. Chairman, could we take just a minute or two? We want to get our bond consultant on the phone so he can be part of the discussion
Sure.
on financing our capital. So I think it'll just take a couple of seconds.
Of course.
While we're doing that, I will distribute a handout to the board.
JNA.
Hi, we're calling for John Peterson for the Board of Fire Commission.
1 second, let me get him.
This is John.
Hello, Mr. Peterson, you're in the meeting.
Thank you.
So item 9 is a recommendation to acknowledge a status report regarding the tentative fiscal year 2022-2023 budget and discussion regarding the priorities and projects anticipated in the budget.
Welcome, Ms. Vance.
Thank you. Cynthia Vance, Chief Fiscal Officer, Truckee Meadows Fire, for the record. So this is a presentation on the tentative budget that was filed on April 15th. And then in 2 weeks, we'll bring back that tentative with the final recommendations for approval. Our current staffing levels are 193 employees, broken down by suppression at 141, fuels 25, admin 11, training 5, prevention 4, fleet 4, and 3 in the EMS. So for the 193 total positions, we are looking to add 2 positions for fiscal year 23 that will include a fiscal position and a specialist for radios. So in 2 years, just it's July 1st, 2020, we had 142 positions. So we've seen a 37% growth in our positions in just 2 years. Okay. So these are our 2 proposed staffing additions that will be included in the budget. A specialist for radio, MDTs, which are our, Chief can give them.
Mobile data terminals, those are the
Thank you.
computers in each of the engines and chief officer vehicles.
And that position will make sure that all that type of equipment is available, up to date, and in use. And then an additional finance position for most fire billing, the GMT processes, and then to assist payroll and have some redundancy in the finance department because we're pretty lean and we've grown quite a bit. There are 12 firefighter paramedics positions that will be frozen. They're currently vacant, and that we will be looking into safer grants, and then any changes with REMSA and ambulance transports that will be looked at further.
May I interject on that?
Yes.
That they were in the budget. We decided to freeze them pending the safer grant approval if we get that. I guess I'm a little tentative on the state of the national economy, and I wanted to wait to see what the future holds in the next few months before we actually recommend those positions and accept the grant if we get the grant. But that's why they're currently frozen.
A look at our revenue projections for the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Property taxes almost 24 million. This is 56% of our revenues budget. Consolidated tax revenues just over 12 million, and that's our next highest revenue source at about 28%. Other governmental revenues is 3.5, and that is like supplemental city county relief tax and federal grants, including the SAFER grants, and then miscellaneous others, which include some of our charges for services or reimbursements related to NV Energy, moving vehicle accidents, and permits. Just over 3 million and 7%. So we're looking at a budgeted revenue source about just over 42 million or 42.7 million. Property taxes are up about 6% over the fiscal year 22 budget of just over 22 million. And we expect that to be very close to budget and actual for this current fiscal year. Our consolidated tax is actually a 20% increase, and that is provided by the state. Over last year's fiscal year 22's budget, the actual we expect to be about $500,000 at least over the estimated what was included in the budget. So we do expect that one to be coming over budget, and we keep a close watch on that because that is, you know, an indicator of the economy if it starts to drop.
Ms. Vance, before you go back on that slide, would you
Yes.
talk just briefly a moment on property tax? Who pays that?
That is the residents within the unincorporated areas of Washoe
Unincorporated
County.
only, right. I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure
And
that
the
we got that on
south,
record.
of, not the north of Township 22 also, 'cause that would
Right.
be in a different
Right,
district.
right.
Okay.
But it's 54 cents per hundred if memory serves me correctly.
That is correct, yes.
And it's only paid by unincorporated residents.
Correct.
Right, it's not paid by either the city of Reno or city of Sparks
It
residents.
is not, no.
Okay, thank you.
For the general fund proposed budget for 22-23, salaries and wages are estimated at 21 million. Employee benefits just over 13.6 million. Service and supplies 6.5, and capital outlay 150,000. This is it will actually represent a slight decrease in total expenditures for the general fund, but that is because we will be presenting a new EMS proprietary fund for the ambulance transfers and the GUMT revenues. So we did move out 3 of those positions, full-time positions will go into that fund, plus anybody staffing the ambulance. With EMS fund, we're looking at about 44 million. So that would have been comparative to fiscal year's 22 general fund. So for next year, we'll split it between two different funds, the general fund and the proprietary EMS fund, and it'll be just over 44 million. Salaries and wages is 84% of our budget. So, I mean, that's what we provide as services. So with services and supplies just over 15% and capital just at 0.4. The capital outlay that comes out of the general fund is related to NV Energy programs and what they purchase for us for vehicles. We do have special programs that we individually line item in the budget, including the peer support program, which is increased by $20,000 to $95,000 for fiscal year 23. Wet team is $30,000. SCBA repairs and replacement at $137,000. Radio repairs and replacement $248,000. The hazmat team at $25,000. The MDT repair and replacement program $10,000. The training assessment program $80,000. Officer development school $40,000. New recruit academy, again, if we don't have to have 2 recruits, this may not all be used at $200,000. Green waste, an increase last year was $40,000. This year we have put $86,000 in for that. And computer refresh program. Our computers are extremely slow, so they haven't, well, they were new. They were before me, so they're at least 6 years old, so $175,000 for the computers. That was necessary.
Okay, before you get off this, Chief, and I don't know whether you want to do it or Ms. Vance, give us just a brief overview of both wet team and the self-contained breathing apparatus repair and replacement. Just quick.
Sure.
Why is it that we need a wet team?
Yeah, I'll let my deputy do that if you
Okay, yep, that's okay.
don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Nope, I don't mind at all.
A little taller here. Good morning. For the record, Alex Kukulas, Deputy Fire Chief. So take the wet team first. That stands for our water entry team. So we have approximately 32 members assigned to that. You often see them on the news. Reno Fire has a similar program, so does Sparks. For our areas of responsibility, mostly in the Truckee River, out in the Verdi area, as well as everything east of Vista, so through the canyon, out the pyramid.
Okay.
And then we also have responsibility on Washoe Lake. We've actually had more rescues on Washoe Lake in the last couple of years with our boat. And so that's what that team is. It's effectively the cost there pay for mostly their training and recertification each year that we have to do, which are sort of mandated. And then the SCBA repair and replacement program, SCBA self-contained breathing apparatus that everyone has to wear. Those cylinders have a shelf life. They have to go through hydro. There's large compressors that have to contribute to that, to refilling those. So it's all the elements of repair, maintenance, and some replacement as those things reach end of life.
Good, no. And the wet tee, where do we stage that? Where's it housed?
So we have our Verdi station, Station 40.
Okay.
We have all the members there, especially, it's more of a seasonal thing. We really don't have a lot of river rescues. It picks up around this time of year.
Right.
And phases out as the water flows typically trickle off in the mid to late summer. But we make sure that we have at least 2 to 3, if not all 4 personnel there, wet qualified. And then same number of people qualified at the East Lake Station, Station
Okay,
32.
good, okay,
And they have a boat at East Lake. They have several rafts, kayaks, et cetera, at Verdi.
good. No, I want people to understand the special programs. I think everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. I mean, that's, at least it is in my opinion, but those two, I just wanted to make sure that people kind of knew what was going on.
So in summary, for our general fund, we're looking at an estimated beginning fund balance of just over, or 8.7 million. The fiscal year 22 budget included a ending fund balance, which becomes our fiscal 23 beginning fund balance of 6.3. So we are expecting to actually end about 2 million above where we projected this time last year. Revenues totaled at 42.7 million, expenditures at just 41.6. Other financing uses, these are our contingencies and transfers, 3.9. That is a $400,000 contingency, which is consistent with prior years. 2.2 million to go to capital projects. 250,000 transfer to the sick and comp liability fund. 370,000 to debt service, and that's for our Barron Way purchase. And then there includes a budget of 663,000 to the EMS fund, which is about 1/4 of the expenses, and that will only be transferred as needed, given the timing for GEMT. There is a possibility those come in before July 1st, and that transfer won't be needed.
Cindy, would you mind discussing a little bit more about the EMS fund and why we're doing that and how we're going to track the costs?
Sure.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes. The new EMS fund is set up as a proprietary fund because it is services that will be provided and be either reimbursed by residents directly through insurance billings or by the GEMT, which is the Government Emergency Medical Transport Program. And we are expecting about 2.1 million from that. That's already been submitted, and we're going through the desk audit process to get that final approval and those funds to come. So there could be a chance that the final budget will need an augmentation. If we receive the monies before June 30th, we'll actually have to put them in the general fund and then do a transfer because the new fund won't start till July 1st. That fund, since it is to track reimbursable items, the EMS was a cost center in the general fund, has been moved there, and that includes our division chiefs and our 2 coordinators that help with the ambulance staffing, the education for EMS medical personnels, and all the different supplies that we need. So this will be a better way to match those expenses with the revenues. So we're hoping that it is 100% funded. We are only just going to be charging the ambulance people that are going to be on the ambulance at the time, so they will log in a code if they're assigned to the ambulance, so that is charged to that fund.
So the costs of running the ambulances is really what we're tracking in that fund. So the board knows the full cost of us providing medic services to your constituents in support of our agreement with REMSA.
We're currently projecting a ending fund balance for the general fund at $5.6 million. And again, the budget is always set conservatively. We do hope that revenues will be higher and expenses will be lower. But that is a 14.3% ending fund balance, which is consistent with what is recommended within the state. So we feel pretty good about that.
And what's the state recommend? Is it
between like 10 and 16?
10 and 16? Okay.
Okay. Included here, that is our existing debt service schedule. As we said, we'll be paying $370,000 from the general fund to the debt service. The capital fund also makes payments. So we have 3 current debt issuances. Our annual debt service is just over $1 million. We have a 4.4 equipment fund that will mature in 2030, a 2.1 building bond that will mature in 2035, and the $7 million building bond that will mature in 2046. Okay, and that's the next 5 years. Okay, and this is capital projects. I will go ahead and pass it over to Chief Moore to kind of talk about our capital projects.
Thank you, Cindy. We've pared down our ambitions in capital projects quite a bit because we're a little bit nervous of where interest rates are going to go. So we had initially discussed the consolidated station, which is full on and recommended in the budget. We're going to continue on that. We've scaled back Hidden Valley just a little bit. We're going to complete the residential portion, but we're going to rely on the existing Apparatus bay for a little bit longer. And we'll remove the modular building from that site. So it'll still be a functional station at Hidden Valley and improved crew quarters. Barron Way we need to do some security and some improvements to the fleet maintenance efficiencies and also a training component. If we can get all that done with $1.5 million, we're going to try. But we'll wait to see what our costing comes out on that. And then primarily the largest piece of a debt issuance is going to be for the consolidated station, which I think you know that construction prices have gone through the roof, and we're anticipating that it could be around $7.5 million. Could be higher than that, but those are the 3 projects that we have anticipated. So we do have Mr. John Peterson, who is our bond consultant. I'd like him to discuss a little bit about where interest rates are headed and the bonding process for you, if that would be helpful. And Mr. Peterson, I'll just let you take it away from here.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chief. For the record, John Peterson with J&A Consulting Group, and really just want to echo what both CFO Vance have said and Chief Moore have said, talking about interest rates increasing, and I think that is not a surprise to most of, as we've watched financial markets over the last 4 or 5 months. Since the beginning of 2022, we have definitely seen interest rates increase. And maybe it's helpful for some history here. Looking at the last bond issue for the district back in July of 2021, that was the $7 million that funded the acquisition of the Barron Way property. That was a 25-year bond that was issued, and at the time, the interest rate, the effective interest rate was 1.97%. And those bonds are rated AA minus from S&P, which is the 4th highest bond rating in their program. And I guess what I'll say is that sometimes it's just better to be lucky than good, because when I look at historical interest rates, over the last 10 years and even over the last 2 or 3 years, we basically issued at pretty much the lowest point in terms of interest rates. And to kind of give an example, tax-exempt municipal bonds are priced off of an index called MMD. That's a Mary Delta. And at the time, the 10-year benchmark rate was 0.88%. And so now we fast forward to where we are today, and that exact same benchmark rate that was 0.88% is now 2.76%. Which is an increase of 1.88%. Primarily, that increase has occurred since January of 2022, and it's been quite steep as we've watched. Week over week, those rates have increased. Primarily, this is being driven by reports, in terms of inflation. We have definitely seen high inflation numbers that haven't been seen in decades. The most recent number that was published for March of 2022 was an annualized inflation rate of 8.5%. And if you look over the last decade, inflation was much closer to 0.1 or 2%. So it's a huge increase. Any number of factors depending on who you ask, but some of it really is just due to some supply issues that have become apparent as we have emerged from COVID, and it will, it remains to be seen, when those issues will be able to resolve themselves. So that's one of the driving forces is the inflation rate, and the federal agency that their charge is to keep inflation under control is the Fed or the FOMC, and their inflation target is 2%. Obviously, we're well above that, and so we're expecting that the Fed over the next coming months is going to take actions to bring that inflation rate down. Primarily, the way that you would see this is by increases to their overnight lending rate. Currently, that rate is 0.25%, and the Fed has a meeting that's scheduled this week, today and tomorrow. And we are expecting that tomorrow, during a press conference, that they will announce that overnight rate will be increased by half a percent from 0.25 to 0.75. Market also believes that there will be another 0.5% increase at their meeting in 2 months, as well as some further rate increases. And really, the purpose of these rate increases is to bring down that inflation rate. To more along with their targets. Some of that expectation in terms of the Fed increasing rates has already been incorporated into market interest rates, but we will have to wait and see, after the press conference tomorrow, what the market's reaction is. I think if it's not 0.5%, there will be some surprise on the market, and the market will also be looking to dissect the wording from Fed Chair Powell on exactly, what their expectations are going forward. But I think that kind of leads us to the question of, what does this mean for Truckee Fire? For the $10 million bond that are in the presentation materials today, I reached out to Chief Moore and CFO Vance and gave a recommendation, as we move this forward, that we consider an interest rate of 4.5%. And that is a significant increase from the 1.97 just 9 months ago. And really that does reflect the change in market interest rates to kind of give the board a flavor of a year-over-year comparison. Just last week, the Clark County RTC sold 20-year bonds at a 3.7% interest rate. They also sold a 20-year bond in April of 2021 at 1.67%. So definitely those rate increases are being realized. In terms of what we expect for this $10 million bond, assuming it's 4.5%, we would expect that annual debt service would be just shy of $700,000 a year. Our current timing does not anticipate that we would actually have any payments on this bond in fiscal year 23. Those payments would actually start in fiscal year 24, just based on when we expect during the fiscal year to issue this. We are exploring what options there are to reduce the interest cost to the district, and any of those options that provide a good solution, we will definitely bring back to the board. One that you may be interested in, the state of Nevada approved what they call the infrastructure bank during the 2021 legislative session. That was funded with $75 million of state bonds that were sold last week. However, we're still waiting from the state treasurer's office for the guidelines on how that program will be administered, and to see if that is something that we could apply for and possibly get a reduced cost loan or maybe even a grant from the state. We'll wait and see what the outcome of that is. Some of the other programs that the board may be familiar with is the state revolving fund. I believe Washoe County used that at the beginning of the year for some sewer projects. Generally, that program is not available to Truckee Fire. That program is federally funded through the EPA and is primarily restricted to drinking water projects and clean water, sanitary sewer, stormwater systems. But if there is an opportunity through the state revolving fund or through the infrastructure bank that we feel provides a better cost of funds to Truckee Fire, we'll definitely take a look at those, weigh the pros and the cons, and bring those back to the board. But that is a very kind of short explanation of what's gone on over the last several months, and I would just pause here and see if there are any questions.
Commissioners, questions for bond counsel? Okay. If there's nothing else, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to take a minute to describe what the service level will look like if the board approves these capital projects. So when Washoe Valley Consolidated Station is finished, the East Lake Station, we're proposing to use that for one of our fuels crews. So that will stay in service with one of our wildfire resources. I've heard that NDF wants to occupy the old Bauer Station. Hopefully they'll upgrade it a little bit. But they would also put a hand crew there, and then we would have a functional station at the new consolidated station. So actually more resources that we would have in Washoe Valley than we currently have today. Our hand crew has, a squad has 4 to 5. Hand crew at NDF would be about the same amount. We still have a really good relationship with Carson City and Mutual Aid to the south end. And then on the north end of Washoe Valley, you'd have our new station. And then also the Apple Station, which would then start responding to calls up and down the I-80 corridor, which are increasing. So we'd be able to leave Hidden Valley in place, which is, Hidden Valley is the station that now responds out the I-80 corridor. And so I've kind of looked at the $7.5 million for the consolidated station as you're really getting 2 new stations. It's just that we're not funding one of them. Apple, by way of a development agreement, is funding the second one. So both need to be completed at the same time. Both will be staffed at the same time. And that's how it will look beginning of 2024.
Okay. So I'm a little disappointed, Chief, that we have not completed Hidden Valley. I would have thought that we would have been done with that by now. It's just an observation. I would have really hoped that would have been taken care of. I don't think it has hindered us in terms of our response, but I feel like that should have been done by now.
Actually, the drawings are fairly well done. It's just I wanted to be conservative in my recommendation for bonding, and we can still add that in. It will just increase the amount of bond that we'll need to ask for.
No, I just think, I question, and I'm not questioning all the improvements at Barron Way, but I just wonder if we should have put some things in front of, and And I know that there's some back of the house stuff, but I'm just wondering about the front of the house. And so I'm hopeful that we'll get Hidden Valley done fairly soon. I see that it's due to be completed in late 22, 23. How are we going to fund that if it's not part of the bonding?
Mayor.
The residential is cash, I believe, Cindy, right?
Correct. But the part of the last funding will pay for that. That is, I believe they will be bringing a recommendation in June. That has gone out to bid just in the recent weeks. So in June, I do expect a recommendation, and that will encumber those funds in fiscal year 22 to start it very soon,
Okay.
out of the current bond proceeds from the 2.1 million and the extra from the 7 million, the premium that was issued on the $7 million debt.
Okay. And Chief, once we get Station 30 built, so we'll be moving some stations around. What's the plan for the North Valleys? When are we going to have an additional station out, Lemon Valley or in those areas?
The board may recall that we've talked about taking Stead and splitting it between Silver Lake and Lemon Valley. We've not taken any action on that yet. It's still there under consideration for us. Actually, I've been waiting to see if things work out a little bit better with respect to boundary drops with the city. So that's on hold. Or it's being talked about. I know Manager Brown is discussing that with his counterparts at the city and City of Sparks, City of Reno, and City of Sparks. I've been part of the conversations, and so it's been on the table. But I wonder what we're going to do with that extra crew from Washoe Valley. That goes to the Apple Station.
That goes to the Apple Station. Okay.
So if we were to do that deployment of Silver Lake and Lemon Valley, then we'd need an additional 12 firefighters, which the SAFER grant could obviously provide for us.
Okay. Vice Chair Hill, have you signed in next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's great that we're looking at the state infrastructure bonds. The key to our being successful with that is if we look at a project labor agreement for one of these projects. And I think we will more than save even if we're going into that type of agreement. So that's what I have heard that the state is really looking for, and I'm happy to chat offline, but I think that would be the smart way to go, and then our bond liability wouldn't be so high, especially during this difficult time with interest rates. So that's my thought and what I'd like to see us move towards, especially with the Washoe Valley Consolidated Station. I think that station is ready to go, and I think that it would be that the state would be excited about partnering on that. It's just we need to kind of play by their rules if we're going to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Lucy, have you signed in next?
Thank you, Chairman. As you look at this from a more elevated level, and we discuss the issues of these capital projects and the bond financing that is necessary. Now, we did hear John, our bond counsel, state that Chairman Powell will meet tomorrow, and you'll see small-term changes to short-term loans such as car loans and HELOCs and things of that nature, but not necessarily direct impact to long-term financing, i.e. mortgages, bond finance of that nature. But I have concerns that we will see it. And it's not, we've seen the Fed in years past in inflation continue. We saw it as recently as 2008. We saw it in 1980. We saw it in 95. So there are issues with this. And my concerns are, and this kind of goes to more of a global discussion in the sense that, one, we have talked about the issue of annexation at this board multiple times because it directly impacts our ability to fund TM. And I know the discussions are ongoing with the boundary drops with the City of Reno and City of Sparks. But when we talk about boundary drops, we need to have the discussion about annexation, because we can drop boundaries, but if we're not funding it properly, and there could be some negative implications. So I want to make sure that those discussions are being had. So if those discussions are ongoing, and I know this is getting off the topic of the budgets a little bit, but Chief, I need you and staff to be participating in those discussions with Manager Brown, because Manager Brown, even though he does represent fire service north of the township up towards Gerlach, he doesn't oversee TM and our budget, which you do as our employee of this board. And I need you to be in the room to discuss that type of financing, because it has a direct impact. And when we look at bonding large projects, to the chairman's point, Hidden Valley and future needs such as stations in the north, if we're going to drop boundary lines, we already have established stations, both Reno and Sparks and TM, in those areas in the North Valleys of Spanish Springs, Sun Valley, Lemon Valley, Cold Springs. Those stations exist, yet we have all of this capital out there that needs to be addressed, these assets that need to be addressed. So to me, this is a bigger global conversation than just looking at specific projects, but truly, when you look at bond financing and what's going to happen, I anticipate the next 24 months being very challenging, not only in the sense of increasing interest rates, but you're going to see adjustments to bond, the markets, bond markets are going to adjust. You're not going to see the rates. We've been very fortunate over the last 3 or 4 years to be able to refund a number of our bonds and realize a lot of saving, but I don't anticipate that being a long-term issue. And as anybody who's been through economics understands, there's always ebb and flow, and I think we're on an up cycle of interest, and it's going to cost us a lot more to operate. And so without the conversation about annexation with our counterparts with boundary drops and whatnot, I need staff to be a part of that, because we're talking about a budget and financing projects, yet have no real answer to what we're going to be doing to financially support projects and different things like that, because the City of Sparks and City of Reno are still allowed to annex the way they're annexing. That takes away capital from us and the ability to fund projects with a growing interest rate. So you see where I'm saying I'm painting a bigger picture here that of concern that needs to be addressed prior to, and don't get me wrong, I'm an advocate for the closest engine to, it needs to be, but this has to be addressed as well. We can't be building station on top of station next to each other and trying to service without having an understanding about how this is globally going to be paid for, or what we're going to be doing to address those needs. So I need staff to be involved in those discussions, and not just executive staff, but I need the labor units so that they're versed upon this, because we're going to, very quickly here, we're going to finish and finalize our negotiations with our labor unit, which is also going to play a major role in regards to when we're talking about 12 frozen positions that we're waiting on a safer grant or potentially other grant opportunities, and we don't have, I know after last season, we had a lot of mandatories and a lot of overtime. We paid a ton in overtime, and it was challenging for us to continue to do that. So we're going to have to add staff. You're going to have labor in the conversation. Plus, you're going to be adding these capital projects with no understanding of how we're going to continue to build upon an economic structure. So, Chairman, those are my concerns. I think they're relevant. I think the board, we need to address them as a board, because we can't just go blindly into a budget. We're going to have to, but we need to start having some answers to some of these questions as well, because I do believe that the ability to have the boundary drop discussion needs to continue, but at the same time, some of these other things need to be addressed as well.
Thank you for that comment, Commissioner. I think the city of Reno and city of Sparks have similar challenges with annexation, maybe from the other end of the spectrum, because I don't believe the city has the ability to provide services, in my opinion, the ability to provide services, say, in areas like Stonegate and other areas that they've annexed.
Right.
And so that global discussion that you've talked about, certainly boundary drops play into that, but the long-term issue of how you provide fire service in this region perhaps needs to include a conversation about a regional department, however that looks. Whether it's a fire authority, whether it's one district, or whether it's on the short term, whether it's boundary drops, I'm not sure. But short of a legislative fix, I'm not sure how we stop a municipality from annexing, because it's their right to do so.
Understood, and that's why I wanted to bring it up today, since we're talking about budget, because by September, BDRs are going to be due with the legislature for next session. When that gavel drops, we need to be ready to have that discussion, be prepared with our partners to address these concerns. And being in this long enough, I know how long it takes to get some of this, these data compiled and this information ready. And, it's not something we just do overnight in a weekend. We have to start building this topic now and making sure that we're prepared, because if it's at the 11th hour and we drop a BDR and Reno and Sparks and whatnot aren't ready to have the discussion or aren't on board with specifically what we're trying to accomplish, we'll find ourselves in a unique position. So I just think from a legislative point, as we continue to talk about financing and budget, we need to make sure that we're apprised of timing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jung, I have you signed in next.
Yes, Commissioner Lucy made me think of a couple things. I just did a little bit of mathematics here for anybody who cares. The average economic cycle of northern Nevada circa the beginning of 1980 is 14 years. 14 years. So that's good for everybody to be keeping this in mind, because we're at our year 14 right now with 2008 and what you're anticipating with the cycle. So that's the cycle here. But I would also put into what Commissioner Lucy is saying, when we are siloed and people are building, not talking to each other and doing it, parallel, the trouble is none of you get any questions about that. All of us do. What the hell are you building another fire station when Reno's just over here? And we're the ones that have to, explain that of what's happening. And furthermore, for Commissioner Lucy, he represents a huge part of Incorporated Reno. So he also has to answer those questions standing right there, right? I don't have a lot of that in my district, but I do believe that we are ripe for giving direction to our chiefs and the temporary chief at Sparks of what we want them to do. And until we have that conversation in public, it's hard to hold staff accountable too for it without giving them clear, board voted on direction. And it's also hard for staff to make any action, because if we haven't given that clear direction, they're sitting in the same seat as you going, I don't know why there's 2 stations built right here, because we didn't empower them with the full board, or who cares if the full board, 3 votes, majority of the board says this is what we want from you. So I think we need to be more sensitive to the people that have to explain this very difficult issue to explain. And most importantly, annexation, as the commissioner said, has been our, you guys know, this is something that we've been worried about forever, because they take our only thing that funds, really, we get sales tax too. 60% of our funding comes from real estate. So when they take our real estate and don't either give us money or work with us and build another station, or we sell them our station maybe, those sort of things, we are doing parallel paths and a waste of money. It's a redundancy that's not even a real redundancy, because it wasn't built to be redundant. It was built, let me tell you the truth, because a developer will give you a piece of crap land and say, here's your fire station. Well, wonderful. Not realizing, we have to build it, we have to put staff in it, we have to maintain it, all of those things. It's never been organized like that. It's been quilt work. And I have yet to see any manager at the cities recognizing that this is in many ways, we keep raising the bar of this and scrambling. It is unsustainable. And it turns around, and you guys know this, growth doesn't pay for growth. Nobody, even people brand new from California living in Arrow Creek, your growth, you did not pay for your growth. Everybody else is subsidizing you. And what we argue as this board, being responsible for the youngest and the coolest fire group, is we don't want to subsidize people anymore. We're not in the business of that. And while we can definitely say growth won't pay for growth, we're sure as heck not paying for your growth. We have no dog even in that fight, because we have a discrete fund that pays for fire. And if Reno and Sparks was smart, they'd create a discrete fund just for fire. And I love it up here. And I've told them that forever. This is the best fire board to be on and give any direction, because I hand it right to the chief and go, here's your budget. You tell me what we're supposed to do with it, instead of, well, we might carve out a little bit of this budget, but heck, be ready for the pink slips, because if we can't balance our budget, we're going to brown out stations and leave people high and dry. So I don't want to be in the business of subsidizing, but I do want to be in the business of first to respond no matter what, because I always think, what if that was me? Right? It's super narcissistic, but it helps you make good decisions in terms of compassion. What if that was me or my family member, or, whatever that might be? And we have to get our arms around that and be ready to make our story to the legislature, probably through a BDR if we can't figure it out ourselves. But I caution you about always wanting to march to the legislature too, even though I'm the biggest big mouth going, that's a BDR, is we also argue with the legislature and say we want to be in control of ourselves. So they also look up to you and go, why can't you guys figure this out? And that goes back to what I had said before. I love when the state gives us unfunded mandates. Give me more. I love it. I mean, it's hard, and we cry, and we have to figure things out, because then I have local control. I am not treated as a undesirable stepchild when it comes to these. I'm not going to say what you knew I was going to say. When it comes to these issues, so the way you work around that, because they're never going to give up home rule. I know that. I don't believe that will ever happen. But the way you work around that is you just have the hybrid home rule issue. So I do really caution that we march like Commissioner Lucy says. There's got to be a place that we can all come together and have our ducks in a row and come with a unified voice, or say, we don't need you, so bugger off, right? Like, don't be around us. We'll take care of it ourselves. But Washoe County should not be subsidizing growth that's happening, unincorporated Washoe County. And it's hard for all of us that are up here, except for maybe one commissioner, I think, is purely unincorporated with a tiny bit of corporation, but every single one of us represents Reno, Sparks, the incorporated section of that. So we really get nailed on, you guys don't come drive around and see the two fire stations, and then to sit down and give them a diatribe of the history of what it's been up here. But I really, I think we should always come from the position of what's fair and square. And of course, in the matter of an emergency, we'll figure that out later. Fight the fire, save the child that drowned, all that. We'll figure that out later. We can figure that out. But it's a race to the bottom, as far as I'm concerned, when we keep doing this and not getting our act together and having really honest conversations of who we want to be. And more importantly, as I've said before, the citizens think we have our whole act together, and I believe we do too if you look at our data, but we could be better. And we should always, this is my values, this is just the way that I live, but I think it reflects the people that live here too. We should always try to be better. Even if we're the best, I want to try to be better. So that goes in with that same goal and vision that the Commissioner Lucy has outlined. So thank you, Ms. Vance. I think you do a great job with our budget, by the way. She's another budget woman that you could ask her anything, line item, and she's got it right there. So thank you.
I will go quickly over the other funds, if you've got it.
Can we hold on for just a second?
Sure, of course.
Because I wanted to dovetail on what was said, and I know that we have Chief Moore signed in also. But Commissioners, I would draw your attention back to the monthly report, page 7, and look at the mutual aid of received and given. It's pretty obvious. 9 for the city of Reno received, 21 given, 10 for the city of Sparks, 45 given. In my own community, Spanish Springs, there's a huge amount of growth right on the edge of incorporated versus unincorporated for Sparks and Washoe County on La Posada. And we are the closest station to all of those developments. It's not a pejorative comment. It's just a comment. And if you look down this, the only 2 that are of any substance, well, there's 3 actually. Story County, North Lake Tahoe, and Pyramid Lake. Now, Pyramid Lake, I would argue, we fund them, we give them equipment and assist them in a very robust way. So that is actually, in my opinion, to be expected, because we've been giving them a lot of assistance, and we try to make them as right as possible. My final comment is this, and you've heard me say this before, but I will say it again. We are the only fire service in the region that you can look at your tax bill and determine how much you pay for fire. You cannot do that in the city of Reno nor the city of Sparks. You have no idea because it draws directly from the general funds. And so if we're ever to fix fire in the region, if we're ever to fix public safety, I'll include public safety in this, Sheriff's Department and police services. If we're ever to fix that, where people can pick up their tax bill and say, this is how much I pay for fire, this is how much I pay for police, it has to be a line item on the tax bill, and those agencies have to live within inside that boundary of the amount that has been granted to them on a tax bill. So, Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the important things we avoid going forward is an example of Station 44, which is at Stead. It used to be entirely in the county, and now it's completely surrounded by City of Reno. So one of the compelling issues we have is that we don't want to build a station to have it eventually, all the property around it annexed, and then we have no more citizens to serve. That's a problem. It's obvious that 5 of our stations are right on the border of the city of Reno. An example in Verdi, Station 40 can easily serve the annexed portions of the city. Right. And so if there's unnecessary stations, I would argue that there's a couple at the city of Reno that don't need to be built. Cold Springs can service Stonegate for probably quite a while until there are enough units built there to where it drives demand to have another station. Verdi is the other example. Don't need to build another station in Verdi because it's within the reasonable response time from Station 40 right now, all the way down to Verdi. With respect to our capital projects, obviously I don't see any annexation threats in Washoe Valley, and I don't necessarily see any annexation threats in Apple. But I really do hear you saying that we don't want to build stations where they're duplicative. And I don't want to relitigate the 2012 when Truckee Meadows stood up again, but the reason why Hidden Valley is there is because the city counseled mutual aid. So we had to put a station there. And we had to move the Verdi station a little bit closer so we could serve Collin Ranch. That's a little bit of history. I hope I'm being fair, but that's kind of where our stations ended up, is because of 10 years ago. Nevertheless, we have great opportunities to move this thing forward and be smart about where we put stations. I'd love to talk to the city of Sparks about their plans of where they need to build a station, but there's an example of where boundary drops and good operational policies between the 2 agencies is working well. But perhaps then I'll schedule something for the next meeting to start talking about this and put our thinking caps on and make some recommendations about how we need to approach it. It's complicated. It's going to be difficult to find agreement with the municipalities, but nevertheless, our interests are not to develop a $7 million station only to have it annexed in a decade.
Chief, and Chairman, if I may, really quick. Go ahead. Chief, I absolutely agree with you, and I think that meeting needs to happen sooner rather than later. And as you continue to look, and as I said, kind of from the 30,000-foot level, one, to what Commissioner Jung said earlier, we hate to go down to the legislature and fight things out. One, because a number of the legislators that are down there have never, or a good majority, have never been involved in municipal government or local government and don't understand the everyday operational needs, and so are making decisions based upon issues that they haven't experienced real time or in person. So I don't like taking issues to the legislature when we can fix them here ourselves, or at least have a good plan and just say, vote on it as long as we're all in agreement. And having the fight down in Carson City, I want to make sure that the fight is had here and the discussion is had here with the municipalities before we even talk about Carson. But I do think Carson needs to play a major role in the discussion, because that is where the law has to change. It's where we are victims of that guidance. We have to play by those rules, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that we can't go down there unified and have that discussion. And then to the chairman's point, when you look at the call volume and mutual aid, when you look at, Story County and Pyramid Lake, it gives you, you talk about the Apple Station not necessarily being in threat of annexation. But I would tell you that through the lands bill that we've been working on here, Sparks has talked about building a road out through, off of Vista and that area to access the Waltham and Tri-Center so that they can continue to grow their industrial properties, which we can't do currently under regional planning, which would take legislative process to fix. So yes, you're right from a very close perspective, but if we're really looking at not just today's issue, but 20 years into the future, because that's what we have to be doing, is that if things were to come in line and we were to get a lands bill and Sparks was able to get certain property, there are opportunities for them to expand into those areas and annex those areas, which would then be right on top of our property. And so I think this is a larger discussion that certain individuals aren't seeing the grand picture, right? We're looking at it, we're kind of seeing the forest through the trees, so to speak, and not really understanding that this is a very, very big forest of issues that we need to discuss. And I think we need to have a broader discussion, but I would hope that we put that on the agenda as soon as possible, even before we can, hopefully you just have enough direction from this board previously to continue to move forward with that and really sit down with the managers and staff and really work this out, because time is of the essence. The longer we wait, the more issues that we're continuing, and we'll see it. We asked for it today in regards to wildfire. We've seen more wildfires down the East Truckee River Canyon than we have in the past 40 years. And that's because of increased traffic and people moving down through there. You look at the North Valleys. We've had massive wildfires out there and continuing changing. So when we talk about funding and what we need to do, this is exactly the reason why we need to do it, because we need to be more efficient with the way we're spending money versus trying to be redundant and continuing to duplicate services over and over again, versus having a better, more broader approach, because we're trying to all address the same issue, but not with any kind of unified understanding. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chair, may I interject here?
Please.
Thank you. I think that the discussions of annexation and the use of our resources and with respect to the budget and capital project is well placed. I just hope, I think that the board wants to come back for another discussion about annexation.
There needs to be another bite at the apple, and I'm sensitive to exactly what you're talking about, Madam Counsel. But I do feel that these conversations are germane to our budget because of these very things. When one of the municipalities gobbles up a piece of property that could have been developed in the county for, let's just say, industrial or commercial, then that revenue is lost to the fire service. And I use that just as an example. But here's all I'll leave you with, commissioners. Distilled down, devil's in the detail. That's, I mean, you know, as we move forward, what it all looks like is it's the devil is in the detail, and nobody wants to give up control, but everybody's going to have to give up control at some point, and that's, I mean, that's just the hard truth of the matter. So, if there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to allow Ms. Vance to continue on.
Okay.
Unless she's buying lunch.
Sure. I'll go give you a quick overview of the other funds. So we've already talked about the EMS, the Emergency Medical Services, which will be a new proprietary fund. That will have a budget of about $2.1 million in the GEMT revenues, and then about $600,000 in direct bill revenues for ambulance transfers. 3 full-time positions plus anybody on the ambulance staff. The emergency fire fund is self-replenishing. We've changed some of our procedures so that does replenish quicker. I did do we're presenting a pretty high budget of $1.8 million in revenues, which will equal reimbursements because everything is reimbursed out of that fund in general, at least 95% of it. 2.1 million in expenditures will be presented, and that does include the Wildlife Fire Protection Fund. It is actually just under 200,000 was the county or the district's portion of that for fiscal year 23. And the sick annual and comp benefits fund includes the transfer of the $250,000, all that used to cover any estimated retirements or payouts. We have about $4.5 million in compensated absences that are comp time or vacation, and those are 100% payout on termination, whether it's retirement or leaving of service. And then we have about $3.9 million in sick balances, and those are payable under certain qualifications of time in PERS or time with the district. The debt service fund, again, will pay our principal and interest about just over $1 million. We have a stabilization fund that can only be used if there's a significant decrease in revenues. And that's just stays there. We haven't done any additional transfers, but it has interest earnings about $642,000 right now. And then our workers' compensation fund, which still pays for the City of Reno heart and lung claims. And this is any new claims after 2012 that are related to heart and lung, because those can come actually at any time, even after service. So we do have about 37 retirees that we pay for that are retired with the City of Reno that had been district employees. But then we also have any employee who transferred to the City of Reno. We pay a proportion of their claims if they do have a heart and lung claim. And we do expect some changes for the funds for what we'll bring back in just 2 weeks, because as noted earlier, we did finalize the union agreement, so there'll be a little bit of adjustments for salary and benefits related to that. And with that, any questions or recommendations to bring back in the next couple of weeks?
Commissioners, Vice Chair, I have you signed in first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, since we're giving direction today for the budget adoption and approval, I have concerns with the bond financing, and I'd really like to see staff pursue those other sources for our Washoe Valley Consolidated Station. I'm hoping that there may be carryover for Barron Way, the Apple Station, and for the design and development fees. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but I worry a bit with proceeding with bond financing at this point and this year.
Okay.
So that's I wanted to make sure that I got that on the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Anyone else? I think we've given Ms. Vance sufficient work to do along the way here. Poor Cindy's been taking copious notes along with other staff to try to memorialize and capture all of this these comments. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, do you want us to take action?
Yes, please.
What would you like? Just accept the report? What is it that you want from us? We've given direction to staff. On item number 9.
Chairman, I can make a motion if you would like.
Okay, go ahead.
Chairman, I'm acknowledging the status report for the tentative fiscal budget to be brought back with any amended changes prior to the finalized budget at the end of the month. I believe we will have a special meeting, correct, to?
Yes.
Okay. That's my motion, sir.
Okay, have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second,
Okay.
as stated on the record.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Vice Chair Hill. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, I will close public comment, bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think motion carries unanimously. Okay, it does. Please affirm your votes. Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. Vance. Chief, that takes us now to item number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 10 is a recommendation to approve a resolution to augment the district's fiscal year 2021 capital projects fund in the amount of $681,982.
Ms. Vance, welcome back.
Thank you. This is my meeting today. This recommendation.
Would you like a bar stool so that you can just sit there?
Maybe. Unless you want more information, I'm going to go over these next ones fairly quickly. But
Yes.
This is just looking at what we've projected to expend during the rest of the fiscal year and the additional sources we brought in. So there was additional proceeds from the issuance and debt was above what was budgeted. We had budgeted $7 million and we had $7.4 million because of a premium on the debt issued. And that was $441,000. We did surplus some assets and sold those. We have $190,000 there. For the services, the different expenditures we plan, which include finishing up on Station 37 with what cash we do have for the capital projects fund, we would need an additional transfer from the general fund of $50,000 just to cover those expected expenditures. So that totals $681,982.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll close public comment on item number 10. We'll bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion, Commissioners.
I move to approve the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Resolution TM 042022 to augment the district's fiscal year 2021-22 capital projects fund in the amount of $681,982 and direct the district to make the appropriate budget adjustments.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, so I have a motion by Hill, second by Herman. We've asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Thank you, Commissioners. Chief, that takes us to item number 11.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 11 is a recommendation to approve a resolution to augment the district's fiscal year 21-22 emergency fund in the amount of $500,000. I believe this is the emergency fire fund.
Correct.
Which pays for our expenses of combating wildland fires through the year.
Okay.
So as we get revenues coming in, we move that to the fire fund.
Got it. Okay. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Resolution TM 05-2022 to augment the district's FY 21-22 emergency fund in the amount of $500,000 and direct the district to make the appropriate budget adjustments.
Second.
We have a motion by Hill, second by Jung. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
There's no one signed in.
Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Okay, thank you so much. All right. Chief, that takes us into our final item, which is a public hearing.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, item 12, public hearing, is a recommendation to approve Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Resolution TM 06-2022 to augment the district's fiscal year 21-22 general fund in the amount of $2,733,016 and direct the district to make the appropriate budget adjustments.
Commissioners, actually, I will open the public hearing at this time. Any questions for staff on this? Ms. Vance?
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
I
Did,
can do a quick presentation. Much of this resolution has to do with items that we had presented earlier
Right.
that we said we would bring back, so.
right, exactly. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. If the county does give a grant to the fire district, we would just get have another budget augmentation, correct?
Yes, we can augment, well, before June, so.
Before June.
June is our last.
Oh, okay. But
Yes.
the last tranche of funding is not even going to be allocated until deep into next fiscal year. So if that happens, then that will just be into the next fiscal year budget.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Thank you for the
We
clarification.
would probably pay for some of the things that we put off because we had to allocate more funds to what we hoped we would possibly get a grant from.
Right. Okay. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, commissioners, any questions or questions from staff or of staff? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
I have nobody signed in.
I will close public comment. I will bring it back to the board, looking for a motion either for or against, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Resolution TM 06-2022 to augment the district's FY 21-22 general fund in the amount of $2,733,16 and direct the district to make the appropriate budget augmentations.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Hill and second by Jung. We asked for public comment. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I believe the motion carries unanimously. It does. Please affirm your votes. Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Vance.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, Chief, that takes us now to item 13. Do we need a closed session?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman. Should take only about 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Let's finish up here, and then we will come back to item 13 and put ourselves in recess and then reconvene upstairs. Chief, that takes us now to item 14, Commissioners and Fire Chiefs announcements.
No announcements from me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay?
Chairman, if I may, just as a continuation of our discussion earlier, that we bring an item back for more future discussion in regards to any legislative processes as it pertains to annexation and budgetary constraints in regards to boundary drops or any changes of service within
Okay.
TMFPD.
Okay, good. And then, Chief, you've got the request for National Weather Service and the water outlook.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will close item 14. Madam Clerk, let's go into our final public comment here, and we will have one more comment period upstairs. Would you open public comment for us, Chief?
Mr. Chairman, item 15, public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, would you please call public comment?
We have Mr. Tom Daly signed in.
Mr. Daly, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. For the record, I'm Tom Daly from the estates at Mount Rose. As a matter of full disclosure, a candidate for the Nevada Republican primary District 26. On April 23 at about 10:30 a.m., Truckee and Meadows Fire Unit Engine 36 responded to a head-on collision of two vehicles on Mount Rose Highway, State Route 431 at Thomas Creek Road, an accident I witnessed firsthand. The advanced warning signal westbound on 431 had been removed days before by NDOT, and the timing of the traffic signal at this intersection from green to yellow to red had been reduced to only 4 seconds. The speed limit there is 55 miles an hour. This accident was a foregone conclusion and the result of NDOT's malfeasance. NDOT has done a poor job of educating the public to these changes and failed to adequately coordinate with those agencies, including Truckee Meadows Fire, who now must clean up the carnage NDOT has created. I would urge this board to consider issuing one or more public service announcements and a press release to the media to help warn residents of the danger of these now changed conditions while transiting this intersection and those same intersections on Pyramid Highway where similar changes have been made by NDOT. Public education as to dangers faced by residents is part of Truckee Meadows Fire's mission. This unconscionable situation is one of those dangers needing public outreach by Truckee Meadows Fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Okay, I will close public comment. Commissioners, I'm going to open back up item 14 because I think it's important for me to make a comment about this. Commissioner Lucy has fought vociferously for the Pyramid Highway safety improvements at RTC. And he and I have fought collectively for the changes on, did I say Pyramid or did I say Mount Rose? Pyramid. I meant Mount Rose. And I have fought for Pyramid. I apologize. Pyramid is constantly on my mind, Commissioner. Sadly, those warning signals will not come back under this administration. They have been very clear that they think that the roadway is safer. So we are where we are. We can certainly discuss any kinds of, in a future meeting, we can discuss bringing something back. But I don't know what more we can really say at this point other than we will, Commissioner Lucy and I will continue to fight at RTC to make both of those roadways safer. So that is all I have. I will close item 4.
Can I comment on that item?
Yeah, I don't have you signed in.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't want you to close it, and then I got lost here. Hey, could I ask you guys to do something at RTC too? That is, and I don't care whose jurisdiction it is, I have some very severe heartburn about the sound walls on 80 and I-580. And I believe, this is just speculation, that's because NDOT does not have experience with Northern Nevada, or whoever's building this. We don't need sound walls to hide ugliness from us, much like Southern Nevada does. These sound walls hide our view of these mountains that we all own. And there's tons of data to support, especially post-pandemic, how much nature and being the viewing of nature brings us all down to a different level. So I want you from the RTC board, which I've had the pleasure to never serve on, to please advocate that sound mitigation is not just walls, it's just what's easiest when they do the walls. It's what they're used to, especially down in Southern Nevada. There are other ways to mitigate sound, and to take away our views of the Sierras is unconscionable and, frankly, very lazy. And any other place in this country, that would never happen. and it has gone unchecked and unmitigated. And I can tell you, I worked on this when I worked for Dave Iazzi at the city of Reno, circa 2004, when they were doing sound walls on 395, saying, why are you doing walls when there's vegetation? There's lots of other things you can do, slopes, to mitigate that, and it never went anywhere there either. But if you have any sort of poll or can talk to people, please ask them to look at other design and build standards to, by law, they have to mitigate the noise, traffic noise. That is a federal law, but there are many ways to do it. And if it requires money, RTC should put money in it because they print money here. And I will say that over and over in this region, and they are the richest body in this region. So I would like them, instead of accelerating the spaghetti bowl, which I think was a great idea on your guys' part, but I want you to get in there and fight for me and these residents who, many of us, that's why we live here, is that beautiful view, no matter where we drive around, but certainly on the freeways, because we don't have any shame to hide behind those walls. No shame. Walls are best for when you don't want to look at unattractive pieces of property. And I think you are not looking at the vision of the future of what it means to live in a beautiful quality of life community when you take away our views of the mountains that we all pay to keep pure, green, beautiful, clean and clear up at the lake. So please, 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 will you raise some hell when you're talking to them for me, please? And if they want more information, I'm happy to share my white paper that I wrote in 2004. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jung. I'm not sure how that pertains to fire, but we're not going to comment any longer on that. There's going to be any more discussion. So, Commissioners, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put us into recess, and we will go upstairs for our closed session, and then we will reconvene for our final public comment. Motion to go into recess. Yes, we do. Go ahead.
So moved.
So I move a second then.
Okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Lucy. We are in recess.